Okay, so we just looked at how we can layer kicks together. We looked at layering a top kick with a low synthesized kick. We also looked at layering two samples together, a low kick and a high kick, and also layering a clap with a kick. Now we're going to look at layering claps, and you tend to have a bit more leeway when you're layering claps. There's a bit less room for error, and the consequences of frequency masking or phasing are not as obvious as they would be when layering kicks. But just like kicks, the importance of samples you pick, I cannot stress that enough. It's incredibly important that you pick source material that works together. So in this video, we're going to be doing three different things. We're going to be layering a clap with some white noise. We're going to be layering a low clap and a high clap, similar to what we did with the kicks. And we're also going to be layering a clap and a snare. So that'll be interesting. So I'm going to get started. I have got this synth kick here, just so we can use it to play the clap in context with the kick, in case we need to do any EQ around that. But for the most part, we'll be focusing on layering these claps together individually in isolation. So what I'm going to do is insert a sampler on this MIDI track and drag in CL2. I'm just going to make a quick MIDI clip. Need to change that up. So we've got a clap, and it's quite nice, but the first thing that came to mind when I heard it was that it lacks that high end, it lacks that sizzle at the top. So what I'm going to do is layer a bit of white noise with it, and to do this, I'm going to use Silent 1. You can use any synthesizer that has a white noise oscillator. I'm going to drag Silent 1 in, turn the volume down quite a bit because Silent 1 is just going to be a lot louder than that clap. I'm going to initialize the preset. Choose white noise as a waveform, two voices to give it some stereo. I'm going to turn the decay, give it a little bit of decay, so we have this. And straight away you can hear that makes a difference. Now what you can do is EQ some of this out. So it's only the high frequencies, and you could take away some of the high frequencies from this initial clap. So I quite like how that sounds. Pretty basic, just a simple technique you can do to add a bit more high into your clap. And if we remember back to that enhancement versus creation way of layering, this would be quite obviously an enhancement. You're enhancing an initial sound. You're not really creating a new one because the bass sound is the most prominent, but you are just adding a little bit extra to change a characteristic. So that's layering a clap with white noise. So we're just going to rename this to C plus W. Now what I want to do is a similar thing, but more of a creation-based way of layering. So I'm going to pick CL3 and copy this MIDI clip over. And when I play it with the kick, I hear that it needs to be pushed a little bit further back. So that's cool. But again, I feel like it's more of a low clap. So what I'm going to do is group this, add an EQ to it, and just subtly get rid of this high end. And now what I'm going to do is layer CL4 with it, which is more of a high clap. Now what's happening here is that they're not really playing at the same time. So what you would do in this case is have two different channels and two different MIDI clips. But for the sake of time and this course, I'm just going to leave it in one place. and I want to pull down the sustain on this high clap here. EQ out some of the mids and lows. So as you can quite clearly hear, both layers are playing an equal part almost, and it's much more of a creation-based approach to layering compared to this clap and white noise over here. So that's cool. That is clap number 2. I'm just going to rename this to low plus high. And finally, I want to show you how you can layer a snare and a clap. Now, in fact, what I'm going to do before that, and one thing I'm going to do with this clap here is just add some glue compression, just to give it a bit more control. So I'm going to adjust the attack, turn up to 3, going to pull the release down a bit, ratio down to 2, and just adjust this to taste. It just cleans it up, gives it a bit more snap, which I like. So now what we're going to do is layer a snare and a clap together. So this is going to be quite straightforward. The two samples that I've got work very well together. So there's minimal processing that we need to do. I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to pull in snare 1, SN1. So we get this really nice sound. In fact, what I'm going to do, let's pull this out. Group this and add in CL5. Hang on. Sampler. And CL5. And it doesn't sound too bad, but it sort of clashes. So what I want to do is EQ this clap to fit around that fundamental snare sound. So now it sounds more like more one. Sounds more like it's one sound. And if I mute either of these, you can tell that it changes just completely. If I mute the snare, you can hear that the characteristic changes completely. If I mute the clap, I mean the snare sounds good by itself, but when you play them together, you get this much more cohesive sound with a lot more width from the clap. And just a different kind of body to it, which is really nice. So that's an easy way of layering a snare and a clap. Now you can of course go a bit more in depth with this. For example, I might pull the sustain down on the clap just to reduce the give it a bit more control and make it sound a bit more tight. Again, I might add compression and all that kind of stuff. But for now, again, I can't reiterate this enough. It comes down to sound selection, source material, and time domain before EQ. And you'll notice there that I did adjust the sustain on the snare, and it just made it fit a little bit better. It made it sound a little bit less disconnected compared to how it was originally. So I hope that all made sense. In the next video, we're going to be concluding our drum layering section with a few tips to go away with.